Can you guys hear me? Okay, I saw a thumbs up. Sam, was that for me? Okay, I'm here.
Mr. Campbell, can you turn your camera on? We have to be able to see you. Oh, there he is. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. His wife had eye surgery today, and he just brought her home. So he's attending to her needs.
He said something, I didn't retain it.
He said she had a hole in the back of her retina.
So he had retinal surgery.
I guess. Yeah, it does not sound pleasant. Really? No fun.
I had dates kind of mixed up in my head. I was thinking August,
Fast.
beginning of August. That occurred to me about 30 minutes ago. I was like, oh, that's why.
5:30 this morning, I didn't want to wake up and
Just making
pack
sure I was
and come back,
mentally prepared.
but I did.
But in 2 weeks, I mean, 2 meetings.
Yeah, if there wouldn't have been a meeting tonight, then I probably would have stayed another day or so. But we'll see. I got a trip coming up at the end of the month. It rolls over into August in Washington D.C. So yeah, we're gonna be gone a whole week. So yeah, we got a Billy Long giving us a tour. Now he probably won't be there because it's election day. That we're there. And then we have a White House tour on the 5th. So, and
You'll never say I wish I never meeting.
that's true. That's true. I did not answer my phone the entire weekend. So no texts, no phone calls. It's very basically, yeah. It doesn't happen very often. It's hard not to answer the phone when it rings. It's hard not to answer the phone when it rings because I never know who's on the other side and what they need. You know. Yeah, but I get lots of calls from lots of people that are not in my directory. So, yeah, I add them too. When I figure out who they are, I put them in there. So. Yeah. I've got 7:01. That says 7:01. Call the meeting to order. If everybody please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, may I get a roll call, please?
Alderman Alder? Alderman Campbell?
I think you're muted.
Mr. Campbell, you're muted.
Here.
There we go. Thank you,
Thank
sir.
you. Alderman Flores?
Here.
Alderman Galloway? Alderman Gardner?
Here.
Alderman Snyder?
Here.
We have 6 aldermen present. We have a quorum.
All right, has everybody had an opportunity to review the minutes of June 16th, June 20th, and June 21st? And if so, are there any amendments or motions? Mr. Gardner.
Here's all of us were here. So. Second.
Motion was made by Alderman Gardner, seconded by Alderman Galloway to adopt the minutes of June 16th, June 20th, and June 21st as presented. All those in favor? That is unanimous. All right. Jumping right into first reading of bills and resolutions, Mr. Flores.
I move that we place Bill 3376 on its first reading by title and description only.
Motion was made by Alderman Flores, seconded by Alderman Gardner, to place bill number 3376 on its first reading by title and description only. All those in favor?
An amended ordinance amending the zoning code and official map by changing the zoning classification of certain property 10 acres in size bordered by Longview Road.
All right. Did you have something additional to go along with this bill?
Yes, this bill comes back after an amendment made at the June 20th meeting to add a conditional overlay district, which is an additional zoning regulation placed on top of the zoning that is being requested by the applicant. The city has received a petition related to the zoning application on this bill. However, that won't be announced until the second reading because there's 14 days where we can still receive signatures for that petition.
Okay. Are you filling in for Mr. Smith with regards to this bill on its first reading? Oh, okay.
Yeah. Hi, can everyone hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Hi. As Amanda Calloway said, we are bringing back an amendment to a zoning amendment for a conditional overlay district proposed by the applicant that would reduce the height of all buildings within 250 feet of the western property line to 1 story. And I'm here for any questions that you guys have.
All right. Does the board have anything for Ms. Bischoff? All right. Is there anyone in the audience here this evening that would like to speak on behalf of this bill? Take anybody in favor first and then opposed second. If you would just come up, push the button in the middle of the microphone there, I'll turn your microphone on. And if you'd get
Transportation Consultants, for a civil engineering firm out of Springfield, Missouri, located at 5051 South National Avenue, Suite 7A. I'm speaking on behalf of Chris Kennard today, and I thought I would kind of just dive in on the 2 different exhibits shown up here and kind of explain the differences between the 2. And we would briefly explain the 2 differences between the 2, and then I would go into a little further look at each one and explain what's happening, what we're proposing. So if you could pull, yeah, Exhibit A. So Exhibit A shows the 250-foot conditional overlay district, as well as an R3 zoning. And then Exhibit B, I'll dive into it a little more depth here in a second, but Exhibit B, if you could pull that one up. Exhibit B shows zoning that property to R1P and satisfying or meeting that requirement for the 25-foot building side yard setback. So if you could flip back over to Exhibit A. Exhibit A is what we're leaning towards. That is definitely, and what we kind of wanted to emphasize between the two exhibits is the links, the measures that were taken to help soften the blow for the development or of the development to those property owners to the west. So with the R3 zoning, we feel like that's a great transitional zoning between that residential and commercial development. You don't ever want a hard line like that. It's always better to have this nice transitional zoning. So I'll dive into some of the measures that were taken to help soften the blow. So as you can see, that red crosshatch pattern, so that represents the 250-foot conditional overlay district zone there. And like, as mentioned before, that would put rules in place that would only allow a single-story home to be built there. What we have shown in the current exhibit is duplexes. So we also included a 3-foot earth berm along with planting on top of it. So we would have that landscape buffer to help provide even more of that seclusion, that just that little bit of buffer zone there. So I know that it was talked about previously with the city sidewalk running through the center of it. So we've added the connector trails to either side of the street to help connect this development, this community. The end goal is to make it all feel as one. So that's been added on there. You can see that. So with as far as stormwater, so you can see that existing pond there. What we're going to do and what we're required to do is we are required to maintain equal or less than stormwater conditions leaving the site. So what I mean by that is we're going to modify that pond in such a way that it's going to add stormwater quality detention, whether that be with modifying the pond as expanding it, making it larger, adding outlet control structures, weir flow structures, so that we can control the water leaving the site. So anyone that's downstream is going to see equal to or even less than stormwater runoff. I just kind of wanted to emphasize that a little bit because there's always concern that there's going to be a lot of stormwater runoff. So a lot of times with these developed conditions, with the developed conditions, we will grade it or design it in such a way that all that water will be collected. And it's 9 times out of 10, it's better than what's there now. So I just really want to emphasize on that. There is talk of adding a second detention basin. I won't dive too far into that because it's not been really looked at yet. But so there's talk of adding a second detention basin. Yeah, so I guess I just wanted to emphasize more than anything else is that the developer is definitely doing all that they can to accommodate those residential properties to the west and to help soften that blow of development there. I think that is everything. I've touched on everything that I wanted to discuss. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have, and thank you for your time.
Mr. Gardner. Would you clarify something for me? You said it and I just didn't understand where you left it. Exhibit A shows the overlay district, and nothing within that area more than 1 story.
Correct.
But what is Exhibit B? I've realized that it's patio homes, but what are you applying for tonight?
So Exhibit B is, we just wanted to more or less show what could be done and what we're leaning towards.
Okay.
So yeah, Exhibit B would be a zoning of an R1P, and it would satisfy, the way that that's laid out is satisfying that requirement for the side yard setback. So that was more or less just to show you what the steps, the measures we are taking to help those properties to the east or to the west. I apologize.
So the side yard setbacks on what you're proposing on Exhibit A are the same as Exhibit B? I mean, they're duplexes, because you've indicated that you were wanting to, the applicant indicated that they were planning on holding these properties, not selling them. So correct. So the advantage of an R1P, if they're not going to sell them, I don't know what that is. So I'm just curious, the side setbacks are the same on either one? I don't know the answer to that. So that may be a Megan question, but what you're leaning to is Exhibit A.
Yeah, exactly, yes. And with Exhibit A, I think that we've moved those duplexes further away from the property line. So they're not even at that 25-foot mark. That closest unit is still a little beyond that 25-foot mark. And we've moved all those units to the north, further east, as to provide that larger buffer zone, that large separation between those existing properties.
Thank you.
Mr. Childers?
I'm only jumping in to help. I'm not trying to steal your show.
Yeah.
But when you look at this exhibit, the green line that you see with the trees represents 25 feet. That's required. If you look at the other exhibit, they would be a 25-foot buffer. You just don't see the green strip right there. But in the purpose of the overlay was to guarantee the reduced height to only 1 story adjacent to the western boundary line, as well as increase the buffer yard more than 25 feet. So those are the 2 primary objectives here. So here, if you went in with a regular R1P patio home zoning district, it looks very much like a duplex or anything else because they function the same. There's 2 dwelling units in there. The developer would be able to do this and get actually closer and would be able to have 2 stories on those buildings. But with the conditional overlay, you are guaranteeing that those dwellings that are closest to the western property line meet more than a 25-foot vegetated buffer and have to be less than 1 story.
Absolutely. Yes. Thank you for that clarification.
Those are just the same words. I used them in a different way.
Yes, I appreciate it. Thank you. Yeah.
The sidewalk,
Yes.
is it just dead end of the property line, or is it connecting to the sidewalk inside of those archives?
So I apologize because I'm filling in on this project so I can't answer that truthfully. I know that it is the intention to connect the walking trail through. I know that there's part of a project that you guys have going on as far as connecting trails all the way to Springfield, if I'm not mistaken. And I know that this would be a piece of that.
One of the greatest concerns that I've gotten from people in the adjacent community is traffic coming down and utilizing their amenities on their property. And so I was wondering if that sidewalk would not create even more confusion as to that being a private subdivision with private amenities. So just a question, Mr. Childers.
The reason why
I'm trying to get to you. All right.
There you go. The reason why you see that trail going down to the southwest corner is because we have a trail master plan. The trail master plan is adopted by the comprehensive plan, simply represents a 25-year trail plan if the city of Ozark was built out. So the developer and his engineer was simply putting that onto the plan because that's what it's called out in our trail master plan. And that's why it was there. Whether or not it actually gets connected, I think largely depends on some access easements that would have to exist in the Ozark Heights subdivision. And so I would assume that that would be an attempt to try to create connection between those trails. I just don't know where those are now. So discussions would have to be held with the HOA. So that's just represented as a trail master plan. It may or may not extend all that way, but this area right here is one that didn't exist before, and there was no connectivity within the residential neighborhoods as you see here. And so they came back, and those will be connection points within that. So going down to the bottom that was just a trail master plan, and the developer was just trying to represent that they were following that.
Perfect, thank you. See who we get first. Go ahead, Mr. Schneider.
You use the term soften the blow. I'm just curious. I have two questions. One, why did you use that particular term? Is it because it's multifamily or is it because of the development as a whole? I'm just curious.
So me in particular, I can speak from personal. If you've got this home built and you've been there for quite some time, and then a development comes in behind. So I guess soften the blow was more or less just to my way of putting into words that the developer is doing everything they can to not impact the way they are currently, those current residents view from their backyards and their life. So, and I guess that's just the way I was trying to put it into words. Sure. Yeah.
I do understand that. I respect that.
Yeah.
You're coming into an area that folks that are not particularly fond of right now.
Yeah.
The other thing, I look at your tree line with your berm. That's a 3-foot berm, is that correct? That's the way it's stated here.
Correct.
With trees. Wouldn't that create the potential for any type of runoff or retention on the other side?
It would be graded in such a way that it didn't affect that. So I mean, we've not dove into that completely yet as to what that stormwater would do, what we would do with that stormwater. But no, we wouldn't develop it in such a way that it would hold that stormwater. A lot of this grades down to that existing pond. So we would provide cuts in the berm or whatever needed to happen to allow that stormwater to come through. But no, we wouldn't hold any water on the properties.
Okay, and this is 3 foot high. How wide, excuse me, 3 foot tall. How wide is this berm?
I don't honestly have an answer for that. We're still just really in the preliminary phase of this.
Okay, with that being said, will that berm support any type of a fence or a barrier once it's built?
Well, so we're going to have vegetation on top of it.
Okay,
so
if someone were to put a barrier fence, could that be done on that berm?
Depending on the width of it, it's possible.
Okay. That's it. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mr. Galloway?
I just wanted to clarify, I think I heard this right. The green line on Exhibit A, that represents 25 feet of vegetation, or did I hear that wrong?
Well, so I was under the understanding that represented that earth berm.
That represents the earth berm.
Yes, correct. And I think Mr. Childers said that was the 25-foot buffer.
There's a 25-foot setback requirement from property line to the side yard setback. The berm itself doesn't have to necessarily be 25 feet wide. It can be less than width. It's 3 foot tall, and that's the vegetation. So the side yard setbacks from property line to the actual structure, near structure, I should say. This is just the structure that we're proposing.
So if I look at Exhibit A on the left side, the structure that's lowest on the left side, that it would be 25 feet, that its wall would be 25 feet away from Ozark Heights. So
yeah, I actually think it's a little greater than 25 feet, but yeah.
And then the other question I had, the berm, does it extend all the way down?
It's just shown as the limits as to there. It grade down to the pond.
It goes, okay, so this accurately shows where it stops, or I mean, as best as you can.
The best as we can, absolutely, yeah.
And is the reason why it doesn't extend all the way down, does that have to do with stormwater retention, or what was the reason?
I would have to follow up with the engineer that drew the plan and submit a formal response to you. I don't know the answer to that.
That would be nice, just a follow-up and
Yeah,
maybe
absolutely.
our communications person, so she can get it out to us. Thank you. That's all the questions.
Yeah, thank you.
Can you, I don't know if Mr. Campbell has any questions or not. I can't see. No questions for you, Mr. Campbell? I got a thumbs down. It means no, not to the project. I think that means no questions. Okay, I didn't want to scare you.
Yeah, thank you for that clarification.
All right, any other questions from the board, Ms. Alder? No, you're not. Now you are.
Okay. Okay, water, let's talk about water.
Absolutely.
You said something about maybe a second retention pond. Why did you
So
say that?
naturally, as it's graded naturally, there's an existing, a small swale
Mhm.
that goes kind of through the southeast corner of the property. So it may require a detention pond in that area.
On the southeast corner?
Correct. So in between the
Right
two
there?
cul-de-sacs there, yes, absolutely.
Okay.
So there is a natural, so kind of where we've left the homes out in that exhibit. So you can see that blank space. That's kind of where they follow across the road and then go southwest. So if that, I'm sorry if that makes sense.
Uh-huh. When would that be determined? If you needed
It
it?
would just be part of the design process. As when the engineers dove into it a little deeper, that would be part of the design
So
process.
before you started building or?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely, yeah. So that would be part of our submittal process to you all. Would, I mean, you would see it well before it was built.
And then the unit 7, how tall are those, 5 and 7?
I don't know that they have a determined height at this point. I can refer over to Chris. You. Yep.
Chris Kennard, 2107 East Rockhurst. So we don't have those done. There's no plan, architectural plans completed at this time. So our intention would be for most everything to be single story for cost of building and other considerations. There is an opportunity there where we might want some depth or some texture on the structures so that they might we might gain a half story, maybe to a second story, so it's just not all one level across there. And I'm talking about on the eastern side of the development, obviously not on the west side of the development. Does that help answer your question?
No, I'm confused.
Okay, I'm sorry. So on these 7 unit and 5 unit.
Yes.
So number one is that we don't have any architectural plan for those at this time. And then furthermore, without that architectural plan, we don't know where we are under the belief right now that everything would just be single story across there.
Oh, really?
But again, for some texture so that it doesn't just look all the same, so that's not boring, if you will, we might want to add some different roof heights on those 5 and 7 unit buildings on the eastern side of the property. Just for what I would call texture.
Yeah. Mhm. Okay.
Does that help?
Sure. Okay.
Happy to answer anything else.
Okay, thank you. Yeah.
Just a couple points of clarification.
Go right ahead.
So on the, I believe, and this would be a question for Megan possibly, but I believe that the buffer yard for a R3 development is actually 30 feet. So that buffer yard would actually be greater than the 25-foot setback, and that would all be full of plantings per the city code. So the berm is part of that. The berm is in lieu of a privacy fence. So the way the code reads, it would be a privacy fence or an earthen berm. And like I said, that buffer yard is actually deeper than the 25-foot setback. Again, that might be a question for Megan, but that's the way I understand it. And then as far as how far to the south the buffer yard goes, probably very much just a function of that there's no structure down in that portion of the development. And since we can't build in that area because of that natural drainage, a good chance that we just don't need that buffer yard there, according to code. So, anything else I can answer?
I have one question.
Yes, sir.
I'm gonna commend you basically on Exhibit B to Exhibit A is a great compromise, I think, on your behalf. One of the questions that has been brought to me is the area of maintenance.
I'm sorry.
So maintenance.
Okay.
So you are going to own the development. Will you take care of all maintenance inside that development? Mowing of yards, trimming of trees, bushes?
So all common area for sure. Absolutely. Any common space we would maintain in-house and would take care of that property like it was any of our other properties that we maintain. If we haven't decided 100% if tenants would maintain their yards or if we will do that. But either way, it'll be written in the lease how they're to maintain their yards, if that's the way we went. But all common area, so all the green space with the walking trail.
Sure.
And all of that would be maintained by us. And I'm sorry, the walking trail thing, Steve pointed it out perfectly. We just ended that where we thought that the city wanted us to end it. We'll put it where we need to put it. There is a natural drainage through there that makes sense to put it there though, so.
Okay. I think one of the comments here is of several people that I've talked to is that sometimes rental properties don't maintain their yards as well.
Mhm.
And that was one of the concerns that several people had. So I just wanted to ask that question.
Yep, so just we are a property management company as well as our other portions of our company, but we're very stringent in how those properties are maintained, and this would be no different.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Mr. Flores?
Yeah, I had a question for you, actually. What question for you? Would you say on average you guys maintain and keep most of your properties, or would you say most of them you sell on average?
So on the residential side, our intention is to 100% maintain these, keep these, and have them for the life. As on our commercial properties, I would say we retain 75% of those. That's a rough number. I'm not on the property management side of the company, but I work closely with them. I would estimate about 75% of those. Anytime we do sell something, then we replace it with something new.
So on your residential side, you guys typically don't sell them after you build them?
No, so we don't currently own very many residential properties. We have in the past. That was something we moved out of to get onto the commercial side. We've owned this property for a number of years, and we want to maintain this property. We want to keep it. So I'm trying to answer your question. Yes. So this section of our development is fairly new, but our intentions are to retain it. I mean, the normal thing would be to own it for 7 years. That's not our intention. We intend to own it for the life.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Anything else?
Any other questions?
Thank you.
All right, thank you, sir. Any additional questions? I think we're good.
All right, thank you.
Is there anyone else here this evening that's here to speak on this topic? On behalf of this topic, yes? In favor or against, yes? You wouldn't mind with your microphone, please?
Chris Goodfellow, 2306 Lakeside Court, here representing Ozark Heights Homeowners Association, 2603 North Skyview Lane. So to start this plan, the zoning request was originally recommended to be denied at the original hearing by planning and zoning. But yeah, here we are. We're moving forward, it seems, in some sense. Additionally, the owner identified at that hearing that his plan was to develop something similar to Deerbrook, which that's not looking like it. I mean, it's got some patio homes, but I'm definitely seeing a lot of not patio homes. I'm seeing a lot of multi-unit pushing for that, 5-7 door development, which is specifically what we were against, which is why the private meeting was held, I guess, between the owner of the property and the city to work out the details on the overlay zone, which that's nice that we didn't have any knowledge of that beforehand, but that's neither here nor there. Altogether, I'm seeing a lot of speculation around how things might work. I see a retention pond, but that doesn't identify the water runoff for the rest of that property. As somebody who backs up to that property directly, I know there's a lot of water runoff there. They're gonna, if it's actually reviewed properly, there's gonna be more than one pond that's needed. Additionally, the area here over there, that one pond, that's taking the trail down to us. So we're gonna have all of these people that, as it was brought up, this may be a planned trail, but we maintain our trails down in Ozark Heights. We just paid to have our trails repaved, cut back. We maintain our recreational amenities, which I see none outlined here. We maintain our pool, and all of that traffic will see our neighborhood as their park because they don't have anything here. As somebody who started out life in smaller unit apartments, you find the closest park to go play with your kids at, and you take them there. Ours is taken care of and maintained for our residents who pay their fees to have access to that. Not for everybody else to just take a 5-minute hike down the road and have access to everything that we're paying for and we're maintaining. Another thing here is this is an unknown number of occupants that are going to be traveling down that way as well, that they don't have to deal with any of the trash. They don't have to pick up after their dogs. We don't have any way of sending them notification that, hey, you can't let your dog pee and poop on your neighbor's yard. You need to clean up after him. You can't be throwing your trash in neighbors' trash cans, which is something we monitor and enforce in our neighborhood. Which brings me to the point of, he said that they're going to be making sure these are maintained, but at the same time, they don't currently own that many residential properties. So they don't have the experience of making sure of that. It's sure commercial properties, it's easy, but how many houses have you driven by that are leased and rented and seen overgrown lawns and trash build up and they don't have trash service out there? You know, how many times have you seen the broken down things and the vehicles and the grass that could grow up behind these houses on the west hand side and lead to Lord only knows what infesting that area? Now, then there's the fact that they say they'll be leasing them out and they're going to maintain that. How's that going to be enforced? Is it just basically somebody's got to call and complain about it? If you're not maintaining it, it's tough to enforce it. Are you going to wait for the city to tell you that it has to be done? Because I've lived in enough residential neighborhoods that aren't maintained to know that if you don't have something saying it has to be done, people are going to push it to, what, 11 inches? It's only 11. I don't have to cut it yet. And I like the term soften the blow. I'm glad that was brought up because I don't know how you're going to soften the blow of when they look around at figuring out comps for Ozark Heights and go, well, sorry, your house isn't worth as much anymore. But to soften the blow, these are only one story right here. Sorry that everybody's traveling down and taking up your park and playground and not following the rules because you can't find them, you can't send them a letter, but these are only one story, so that'll soften the blow. As far as water runoff again, the amount of water that actually comes off of this property is enough that people kayak in the stream that's created in the spring. So one retention pond, that's an existing pond that they're going to make better. I doubt it's actually going to work as well as it's planned here. And then, yeah, that's pretty much it for now. But to highlight again, the recommendation on the zoning request was to deny it from planning and zoning. Private meeting was held to come up with an overlay zone that was not privy to public knowledge until the actual day that this was listed here in hearings. And then additionally, what he said that day and what were delivered today is very different. So what actually gets delivered after final results are in of what's allowed, I'm sure will be even more different. And we're doing the nice thing and we're going to put this here and it's 25 feet versus 30 feet. If we go this one or that one, I'm sorry, but 5 feet doesn't soften the blow because that's not even a third of the distance between you and I. So 5 feet ain't making a difference. Thanks. Yes.
Go right ahead.
Do you, all around you, you have different zoning, you have a mobile park, you have commercial, you have industrial. What would you like to see happen to that property?
I'd like to see residential.
Residential?
So you're right, we do. We have a mobile home across the street. It's been there years and years. And then there are multi-unit dwellings as well. And if you drive by there, the quality of how those are maintained and everything, it's not beautiful. It's not nice. And we do occasionally have to deal with those people coming down into our neighborhood and making messes and jumping fences and getting into things. But it's a small limited amount, and some of them know from experience, from us having to address it. And there is commercial, but it's further away. It's the opposite side of this. So we would just like residential. There's another development that is, the man bought the property. I've met him. It's just south of this one. He has residential planned. We have no objection to that. He wants to build homes that are nice, that would work with our community and our neighborhood. And he's had conversations with us about his plans so that we could make sure we're on the same page.
Where's that one going? Where
It
is
would be south of this one. It's not to this point. It's a much slower progress.
Mhm,
But that's, again, it's a residential zone
mhm.
already. He's not asking for it to be rezoned R3 to put in whatever else.
Do you have a thought that if this doesn't happen, that you might get something that you like least?
I'll be back here if that happens, but my goal is residential. I mean, we have residential to the west of us. We have residential to the north of us, and also a field that, they're trying to sell off to the goal of, again, residential.
Mhm.
Residential to the south of us. So you would have all of this residential, and then this little corner right here of whatever gets approved for this. So having residential would just be beneficial to everybody, because you guys are going to be more stringent about how residential is. They have to have the right access. They have to have the right exits. They have to have the right everything else. He's changed his plans 2 or 3 times since the initial zoning meeting of what was going to be going in here. So our fear is you approve an R3, switch it out yet again. And other than that 250 foot, everything else is just going to be 7-8 unit buildings.
Okay, thank you.
Any other? Yes.
Mr. Snyder.
Just elaborating on what Ms. Alder was talking about, you don't have a problem with a development, but if it were single family.
Right.
Now, you can't speak for your neighbors, but have you spoken with your neighbors?
I have, as one of the board members, we went around and talked to all of our neighbors to collect the signatures so that the board could have the right to speak on behalf of the HOA. And everybody is against the multi-unit. They're okay with residential. We've got it all around us, and those people are invested in their homes. They come in, they buy a nice home, they spend 300, 400, 500,000 on that home. You spend that kind of money on your home, you take care of it for the most part. Occasionally somebody lets it go, but for the most part, they take care of it. You pay rent, you're having a hard month, or maybe you just don't care. I've had plenty of neighbors that just didn't. Residential homes tend to have a little bit more care, because if you guys send them a letter, then you send them a fine. And if there's no enforcement from these guys, what's going to happen?
Okay,
And
appreciate that.
And again, they don't currently own a lot of residential. So the experience of making sure that residential is handled is a big concern too.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Galloway.
I just had a question for the city administrator.
Sir.
On the issue of enforcement, so as I understand it, the developer intends to take the common areas for themselves and maybe the yards and mow them. Let's just assume that the tenants are responsible for the yards. And the developer maintains the common areas. Then let's assume 7 years from now, the developer sells to another company to run this complex. And that company decides they're not going to mow the common area. What are the enforcement rules?
Well, to start, this is a residentially zoned district, like would it be single family or would it be multifamily through R3 or R4? All of them are required to establish a property owners association or homeowners association at the platting phase. So they're going to be required to file with the Secretary of State covenants and restrictions associated with this type of development. Now, I'll be the first to tell you that a property owners association or a homeowners association is really only as good as its board that governs it. So you may have one and it may not have an active board, but that neighborhood gets together, they move forward and they have people that are elected to that board to take over that neighborhood. But it would be required to have that. So if the developer were 7-8 years down the road, if they did decide to sell this, then the property owners association would still be required to maintain that, because that's transferable with the deed of the property. That runs along with the property. And if that property owner association or the entity that owned the property owners association, that they were considered the president or the owner of that, they would be fined for any violations, just like a single family residential yard would be, or a large common area that got overgrown. They would be treated the exact same way. They would have weed violations. And the one thing I will say about the multifamily, if you were to go to a single family house and you were to file and the city issued a citation, that citation was not responded to, then the city does have a process in place where they could step in and they could take care or remedy that violation, if you will, and they would mow that. Now, by doing that, we've incurred costs. The public has incurred costs. So therefore, we would put a lien on that property where we had to mow and take care of that. In this particular instance, you would be putting a lien on the entire property owners association, not just one individual violator, but the entire association, which encompasses the entire property, which is a pretty hefty fine.
And if I may, and I'm sorry, I don't mean to put you on the spot.
No, that's okay.
I was just taking in the comments of the as to enforcement. I mean, let's assume 7 years from now, there is no functioning HOA. Developer has turned it over and they don't meet, and legally it just does not exist. What does the city do then? What is our remedy then if the common areas are not?
Well, whether they're functioning or not, the entity still exists. And so if we had to step in and we had to continually mow and maintain that, then that entity is going to continue to receive liens. And this may be one for Ms. Callaway, but anybody that doesn't want to lose their property is going to have to pay their property taxes. Okay. And you get up to 3 years to pay those property taxes. And when you pay those property taxes, those liens are on those property taxes. So in order to be current on your property taxes, you have to pay that special assessment at the same time you pay those property taxes. If I'm saying that wrong, I apologize. That's how I understand it to be.
Well, I couldn't get my microphone to come on, so I was panicked. That is generally correct. So this is going to be owned as one tract of land. And so you would have one owner that is recorded as being responsible for the maintenance of that property, regardless of whether in their personal leases, they give that responsibility to their tenants. They're going to be the owner of the property. And so they will be cited for that violation. If they fail to respond to the citation, which is a criminal citation through circuit court, they will be the city will go in and maintain that nuisance violation. And then that assessment will be placed on their tax bill. If they fail to pay that, then the city could go in and try to collect that. Ultimately, what could occur is the city could pay off the debt that's owed to the city and then purchase the property, which ultimately, I don't know if that would happen in this case, but that's the full process.
The idea would be the successor owner of that single tract of land would be incentivized to maintain common ground, common area where they're going to be behind on their taxes and will be paying liens off for us.
Yes, and they will also be criminally in violation of the law. So there'll be a criminal citation and they will be assessed the cost of the city's maintenance if that action is taken.
So on the criminal side, I guess levying fines and that sort of thing in addition to recouping our costs of mowing.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Gardner.
Yes, I've heard Mr. Goodfellow's comments and I don't disagree with them. I've seen homeowners or property owners associations come and go through the years, and there are good ones and there are bad ones. And there are probably city administrations that tend to enforce their codes better than others. But the bottom line is we're here to zone property, not to determine whether a homeowners association is going to take care of the property. And I think that particularly with that overlay district, that it satisfies my concerns. I see that there could be a problem with them not taking care of it. On the same standpoint, it's not likely, but they could have the same problem with those Arkites, the people that live back there not taking care of their property. These are all hypothetical situations, and we're here to zone dirt, and it meets the requirements, in my eyes, with that overlay. So I just wanted to.
All right. Mr. Galloway?
Thank you. And I did have.
Ma'am, we're still in the public forum. I'll give you an opportunity. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
And in terms of how the overlay developed, and I'm sorry, we had the July 4 holiday, and I should have reached out, Rick, to you and RJ to get this question answered. So there was a comment that was made that there was a closed meeting or something with the developer and an agreement was made. I'm assuming they're referring to the overlay. Was there a meeting with the administration, or was it just aldermen that doing their job representing people and trying to connect with the?
I'll tell you what that is. You know, anytime you go through the process like we have on just about any piece of property where there's been a new proposal, the developer goes before the Planning and Zoning Commission and there's testimony and there's hearings, then there's a lot of comments, and the public and the neighbors, they make a lot of comments. And we listen to those. I mean, staff takes that very seriously. Our P&Z does, and I know our Board of Aldermen do. And so after the meetings that were held about this property, the developer reached out to the staff and said, hey, look, we understand. I think that, as you said, soften the blow or whatever. We know the neighbors have concerns. We understand. Can you please explain to us what you're hearing their concerns are? Things like density and height and setbacks and all those kind of things, stormwater runoff, other things. And so we simply set a meeting up with the developer to help answer their questions and be on that same page. And they asked us, is there anything we can do? What is there? We brought forward the fact that I think maybe a couple of years ago, I don't even think it's been very long, we tend to deal with neighbor concerns quite a bit. And so because of that, we saw an opportunity in the city of Springfield that has this very similar ordinance that allows for additional conditions to be put on. So a couple of years ago, we adopted the conditional overlay zone. We had not used it yet. So when we were approached, is there anything we can do? That's when we brought up the idea of utilizing this tool, which is a relatively new ordinance for us. So it's just a tool we wanted to put in place to try to alleviate some of the concerns of the neighbors. And that's how we got here. So,
thank
you. Any other questions up here? Anybody else in the audience? Go ahead and come forward. Name and address to the clerk, please. You're good. You're on.
Leslie Metcalf, 2402 West Crestwood, Ozark, Missouri. I'm coming on behalf of myself as a resident, but I'm also speaking on behalf of the board also. I'm the president of the board. I have lived in the same exact house since 2008. I've seen the effects of the water. I have actually walked that property to at least to the first property line years ago when I had dogs. I know for a fact that whenever we had a heavy rain, it was at least 2 weeks before that area dried up along that first fence line on that first piece of property that we're talking about that's east of Ozark Heights. It's marshy, you wear muck boots, and that's just the beginning of it, because the kayaks that Chris was speaking about really does exist. It might be funny to take an Instagram picture, but when we have a flash flooding rain, the trail that runs between two sections of the neighborhood, it actually does become a river. And then that's actually flowing from another pond that we actually have on our own property that comes from this pond here. So it's really, I think, very hard pressed for this development company to prove that they're going to make it better and not worse. I'm not sure what they can actually do to a pond on this property that's going to actually make the situation better. I know of multitude of homes that have had to re-drywall because of flooding that has come into their basement because they back up to this property, or don't even back up to the property in question, but they back up to the areas where it floods. And that's just the flooding. I'm the president now. I've been the president for the last 2 years. I've been on the board for probably 7 or 8 years in different facets. I'm the one that takes the calls recently in the last 2 years when kids jump the fence of the swimming pool that don't even live there. Just recently, two weeks ago, we had 9 boys that jumped the fence. They came in, nobody knows who they are. So we can't prosecute, or we can't send a letter, or we can't call the police. We can't do anything about it because they don't live there. You've got two boys that are playing basketball on our basketball courts. And because he doesn't live there, of course, we're not so rude that we go up and say, do you live here? We're a little bit flexible when it comes to that, but he jumps the fence right in broad daylight because he has to go to the bathroom. So it's just incidences like that, and they're destructive. I mean, and so I don't really blame kids for being teenagers and they want to enjoy the amenities that we have. But all of our homeowners, they pay a lot of money every year. Some of the homeowners, they can't quite afford it as well as others, but they work hard, and we maintain the property. We enforce them to, we have a way to enforce them to maintain their property, enforce them to pay their dues. We have repercussions. One of them is that they don't get to use the amenities, and we have a way to enforce that. So by putting a piece of property like this that does not have any of those amenities, really it's not fair to the residents that live there. Honestly, you're putting you're dangling a carrot in front of their nose, but no, they can't use those amenities. The most ideal place to put something like this is close to the OC, or someplace where there are tennis courts, or they do install things like that. I mean, so I'm just talking behalf that these experiences that we're telling you about, it's not rare, it's not imaginable, it's not, well, maybe it'll happen. It does happen, and it will happen. And I'm here to present my case on behalf of the whole HOA and myself too. And I would be really sad to see this happen.
Mr. Gardner, do you have a question?
Yes, and I don't know who to address it to, but it seems like it wasn't very long ago where we had a discussion about a residential subdivision and a requirement to put in a pool. Am I imagining, or if somebody comes with a single family subdivision, is there a requirement to put in a pool?
Mr. Childers.
You're not imagining that. We've had several conversations about modifying our single-family zoning ordinances to where we don't have an A, B, C, or D, but we have an SF1 and an SF2. We have been discussing that with planning and zoning as well as the board, but that has not been back since we last discussed it. And so that requirement has not yet been adopted. So as of right now, there is no requirement for neighborhoods, new neighborhoods, to put amenities into that. It is something we brought forward, and it's something that we're discussing, hadn't been adopted.
So that being the case, we cannot require it. But if they were to come to us with the idea of a neighborhood pool of your own, seems like that should satisfy a lot of the Ozark Heights concern. Maybe not all of them. I mean, but as far as using the amenities, and I don't know how many units there are there. I haven't counted them, but they're probably upwards of 100.
96, I believe.
96. Well, whatever. There are a lot, and that was an idea. I like the idea of the overlay district. I hadn't thought of that, and I like the idea of you all having your own neighborhood pool. I think if you're going to have that many people, there are going to be kids that they're going to look over the fence and see that. And are we creating a problem for the Ozark Heights people? I mean, theoretically, it's up to Ozark Heights to police their own amenities. But are we knowingly making that worse? And could it be alleviated some if there were more amenities in this or some amenities? There aren't any right now, except the trails that we require for that 96 unit subdivision. So that's just a question. Because as far as the zoning side of it, I don't have a problem, but I'd sure feel better if there was a pool there. So.
Okay. Is there anyone else in the audience? Please come forward. Give your name and address to the clerk.
Philip Webb. I'm at 2808 North 24th Street, and I'm one of those houses that's right there on the property line. And if you put that berm behind my house, you're going to have water running all over the house below me, because it runs from 4 or 5 houses through my yard, and it doesn't go into the pond. It goes into the drainage area beside the pond. And if you berm it up behind my house, you're going to push it down on the people below me. And that's not going to work very well. I would like to think, I'd like to extend an invitation to all of you, every one of you. Drive through Ozark Heights just once and just look at it. We have trees in there that they moved a road because the tree was 57 or 80 years old. And they said, we want to keep those trees in there. We want to keep that natural part of Ozark. Now, I know we're across the highway from Ozark, but I still pay taxes in Ozark, and I'm just like you, and I'm depending on you all to make sure that the people that are behind us, whatever it is, nail it down. It was one story. Now all of a sudden it's every other one's going to have a half a story or a 3/4 of a story. And I want to go back to when these people first bought that property. There was a fence down all along Longview. There were some trees in there. They came in with bulldozers and they dozed it all up in a big pile, and they said, we're going to burn it. We're going to get rid of it. However long they've had it, it's still there today. So, you know, they're only going to do what you require them to do. Please help us out here. We need your help. We knew something was going in there, and I'm one of those, and my neighbors on both sides of me have no problem with single family homes. None of them do. We could have had 100 people up here to talk to you, but they said, look, just a few of you go. Don't take all this time, because we're going to be talking over and over and over. And we want to make sure that you get our heart and and what we're thinking here, but without crowding this thing up till midnight every night here. We could do that, but we have all the signatures to do it. The berm is going to be a problem. It's not going to be a fix-all. The pond we have has a bladder in it. It has sinkholes all around it. And if we had to put a bladder in it for thousands of dollars, it wouldn't hold water. We wouldn't have the fish in it we have. It's a beautiful place there. It's got fountains. It's got everything in it. We got a park behind that. But the developers at Ozark Heights made sure. I don't know. I haven't been in all of Ozark. I've only been here 5 years. I've lived in the Ozarks since '87. But I don't know that there's another homeowner association with that many homes in it that's any nicer. They're all brick homes. I don't know if there is, and there may be some, I don't know. But the only area that we lack, making sure that we are okay and they treat us fair and honestly and do this. I mean, I've not heard anybody that's for this walk to this platform, this podium, and say, I've been in Ozark Heights and it is a beautiful place. We really like it. It makes our land worth more, and we appreciate that, and we're going to do all we can. No, we're going to do a little here, we're going to do a little here, but we might not do all of that. We might do part of it, but not all of it. I'm begging you, I'm asking you, if you want some more Ozark Heights areas in Ozark and around the area, take care of what we've already got. We've already got taxpayers paying taxes. My wife and I, we spend every dime we can in the city of Ozark. And we vote for school board elections, and school elections. We believe that our future's in our young people. My oldest grandson went to another state to go to college, graduated about 6 weeks ago, came back to Ozark. He's working in Ozark because he loves this place. Springfield used to look like Ozark. It don't anymore. Hundreds and hundreds of cars. I was a chaplain on Springfield, in Springfield Police Department, Greene County, and the Highway Patrol for 10 years. Believe me. When I first came here, they said, you know, your taxes are high here, but you have a great police force and they take care of things. And I have found them to be that. Don't trade this, what we have, for what they have in Springfield, so that your police department is stacked up trying to do things that they can't get to it now because it's all full of people and apartments and people running over people. Anyway, thank you. I'm sorry, I should have taken my hat off. I'll do that now. But anyway, I thank you for your time. Please, we need your help. Whatever you approve, nail it down. Make sure. I had 24 of my grandkids and my kids with us over the 4th of July holiday. And when I walk out on my back porch and I cook a turkey and a big green egg, there's nothing back there. There's nothing. And I don't mind the roof sticking up, but I don't want everybody standing back there looking at my kids and my grandkids, and I while we cook behind our house. I don't think you want that either. I can handle the roof back there, but not a 2-story. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Yes.
First of all, I have driven through Ozark Heights, and you're right, your community is beautiful and it's an asset to Ozark. My question is if it was zoned and they did put single family homes there, how do you think that would change the problems that you've been discussing? The runoff, the people coming into your subdivision, do you think that would be better?
I think it would be, I tell you what, I would trust homeowners. Now, I lived in an apartment when I first got married. I mean, when I first got married, my wife stayed at home with her folks. We couldn't afford an apartment. We couldn't afford a house or an apartment or a car to go get our license in. So I know what it's like to be poor. I've just been at it longer than some of those that are in the apartments. But what I've seen up here where we are now on Longview and 21st Street, those apartments, I mean, I went by there the other day on Thursday and the trash cans picked up on Monday, and there was still 12 trash cans out there, and it was a couch and a love seat and a couple of end tables sitting on the street there, and they just kind of leave them there when somebody comes and gets them, I guess. I don't know. It's just, you know, hey, it's not the end of the world. I'm not any better than the worst person in those apartments. I'm not. I've just been at it longer, and I appreciate what I have more, and I take care of what I have, and I do my best to do that. I want to be an asset to the city of Ozark, and I want everything around me. You guys you can solidify this. This is the only area we lack. It's not single family around Ozark Heights. It's right there. That's it. And if we can do that, somebody will say, hey, I just don't see that a bulldozer, a backhoe, 5-gallon diesel fuel, and a match makes Ozark a better looking place. You can go between us and Nixa. I mean, why did they take everything out of a floodplain area? Why did they strip that? I mean, you can't build in it. but they just take it. They could leave the trees and pick out some of those nice trees and make a difference, but they won't do it. When you put apartments in, it's all or none. We just strip from property line to property line. And it just opens up a can of worms for people that have invested in their homes. But anyway, I appreciate your question, and I'll take my chances with single family homes. They may not be as expensive as ours, but usually there's a lot of pride in ownership. And we have a lot of new additions out there, along that, coming off of CC there. And those homes are nice, and the sticks they leave in the place of the nice big tree is for the generation down the road, not you and I. We won't be here long enough to really enjoy those. But anyway, I appreciate your question. Anybody else have any questions? I'd be glad to answer them for you.
Thank you, sir.
Hold them to their first story, nothing else, nothing, you know what I'm saying? Because I tell you what they're going to do. They're not going to spend one dime more than you require them to spend. They're not going to add to it. They don't live here. They ain't never going to live here. But I do, just like you do. Thank you for your time. You've been very kind to me, and I appreciate it very much.
You bet. You bet.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else here this evening to speak on this topic? Mr. Gardner, do you have a question?
Not a question, just another comment. I am confident that we can take care of any stormwater problems that may come up with the engineering phase of the plat. So I'm not worried about that. But I just want to go on record of saying I would vote in favor of this if it had an amenity of some sort, like a pool or a playground area.
Okay. Any other public comments? Yes, sir.
Anthony Swanigan with CJW 5051 South National Avenue, Springfield, Missouri. I just want to kind of touch base briefly on the stormwater. It sounds like that's a great concern, is stormwater. And there are, coming from the stormwater division, there are a great number of different things that can be done. And then this is what we do every day. So we take conditions like that and we improve them and we make them much better. So if we had to do multiple stages of the pond, expanding it to hold that extra water, we just want to, we want to help what's downstream of it. And there's other things that can be done with infrastructure. We could route that stormwater, we could do inlets alongside the roads, and we could pipe that water somewhere else and help out with those water conditions. So I just wanted to say that briefly, and just to help ease any concern. There is a great number of things that we can do that will make that a lot better. Thank you.
Mr. Galloway.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate your comment.
Yeah, thank you.
I just wanted to join Alderman Gardner in his comments there. I think I share them entirely.
Mr. Flores.
This one being an R1A sitting there next to it. We don't get a lot of R1As. We get a lot of R1A as far as the size of the lots in Ozark Heights. I do believe the whole development is that size of lot. Am I correct there?
Semi. I believe Ozark Heights I believe it was zoned R1A, but I don't believe all the lots are actually conforming to that zoning district. I think there are several non-conforming lots inside Ozark Heights. So although that's been grandfathered in, I don't believe that they're all conforming.
Gotcha. I do know, looking at it on the zoning map and things like that, you can tell the lots are on an average or a larger size. So we have a lot of areas in the city right now where we have multifamily letting up to R1A. I hate to put you on the spot or specific.
I don't know specifically. I mean, you have very few properties that are actually zoned R1A. Like I said, even though Ozark Heights was zoned R1A, I don't know that a lot of the lots out there are really 20,000 square feet. The majority, I believe, are 10,000 square feet. Maybe a more appropriate question is there a lot of instances where duplexes and R3 zoning districts are are adjacent to single family neighborhoods. And I only say that because in looking at the comments, if the developer were to propose R1D being a 7,500 square foot lot, it's single family. And you would get far more density out of that single family zoning than 96 units if you were to go into that property and actually put that in. So I don't know how many more exactly, but I'm just saying, but I respect the comment of I'll take my chances with single family versus the multifamily. I believe that was mentioned. I just wanted to point that out, that from a density standpoint, from a height standpoint, and I'm not advocating for one or the other, just with the conversation is single family is single family, small lot, big lot. You could go on a 10,000 square foot lot and put a 1,200 square foot house. You could go on a 7,500 square foot lot and put a 3,000 square foot house. There's no guarantee based on our zoning ordinances that even if it was zoned single family, that any of the houses are going to be brick, that there's going to be any minimum square footage requirement in the homes, or that anything would have to look like Ozark Heights. But you could still zone it single family, but you could have 1,200 square foot homes, vinyl siding, and so forth. I just wanted to throw that out there. So we don't have those kind of design guidelines in the single family, as you were mentioning earlier.
Any other questions or comments, pardon me, from the audience? Mr. Campbell, do you have anything?
No.
Okay, perfect. I've been asked numerous times about my thoughts on things, and I don't tend to speak my mind at the Board of Alderman meetings, because this is your meeting and I only preside at it. But I do have some comments that I'm going to make. We have two different zoning issues in front of this evening, and personally, I don't agree with either one of them. I look at zoning a little bit differently than other people do, I guess. I look at zoning as an ebb and flow, and this one particular, to me, looks like we're just throwing something down to fill a void, and it doesn't flow with the neighborhood that's next to it. But I also believe in property rights, and these people own the property, and shouldn't they be able to do what they want to with their property within the guidelines of the law and the zoning? I'm tickled to death that they made a compromise over here in this one phase. I would love if their compromise was even bigger, and to people, I wrote down a lot of notes here, so I may ramble a little bit back and forth here, but my advice to anybody in the city of Ozark, if you like looking out your window and seeing a vacant piece of land, buy it, because that's the only way you're going to be able to maintain it as a vacant piece of land. Ozark's developing, Ozark's growing, and as long as a development company is within the confines of the law, and that's what we're supposed to look at, not what Mayor Brad Jackson's personal opinion is, but what is within the guides of the law. That's what we have to kind of look at. What are the facts? I don't agree with this multifamily here. I think it better to be single family, to give a little bit more flow. I voiced the concerns of the neighbors in Ozark Heights, because I represent them. I mean, they are taxpayers in the community, and my job is to represent them and make their voices heard. And I don't like this development. It's just me and my personal opinion. Please don't take it as anything against you and your company. I just don't see where it flows properly. Multifamily should be in closer to commercial corridors in the center city. The way I look at planning and zoning is larger lots as you go out into the outside of the downtown. But ultimately, this is going to be, there were questions about water runoff. The law states that they must make it better than or it can't be any worse than what it currently is. So rest assured, it's not going to be worse. If it is worse, you have recourse on that property owner. I think the berm probably should come down to help seclude the two neighborhoods should this zoning request go forward, to give that better separation. I do understand your concern, and water will find its way to the lowest point, and you can do everything in your world to control it, and that's all you can do is try to control it. I agreed with the Planning and Zoning Commission when they denied this, and I'll leave it at that. That was my agreement with them, and that's based off what I believe in my personal opinion, not necessarily what the finding of facts are and what the law states. And I'll yield the floor back. Ms. Alder.
I was just curious on your statement that if somebody buys a piece of property, they can do what they want with it as long as you're following the laws. Well, what happens to city planning?
Well, I understand where you're going with this. So
Yeah.
I believe in property rights.
Yeah.
But when you live in a metropolitan area and you're dealing with neighbors, you have to somewhat concede those things. If you want to be able to do whatever you want to on your property, you're going to have to go into an area which would allow that, and that would be out in the county. You know, if you had 80 acres of land, you could pretty much, to an extent, do a little bit more than what you can inside the city limits of Ozark. So there's a concession that has to be made. You have to follow guidelines and ordinances and zoning regulations and so forth. So you can't just necessarily, these fine people cannot just do everything they want to, but they can do what they want to within the confines of the law.
I thought that's what you said, that if a person buys a piece of property and follows the law, they can build whatever they want as long as they're following.
As long as they're following the law and what the law states.
But what if they want to build something that isn't conducive to where they're building it? I'm actually agreeing with what you said, what I'm doing.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to understand how it really does work, because, you know, you want the city to look a certain way.
Absolutely. I think that's why we have zoning regulations and zoning guidelines. And there are some loopholes that will allow certain things to happen. I can argue both sides of the topic, and I have numerous times with different people. Ozark Heights is a wonderful subdivision. I think you guys have a great thing, but the apartment complexes that keep getting brought up were here before you guys. The mobile home park that keeps getting brought up was here before you guys. So you guys moved into an area that already had, if there ever was a depreciated home value, that would have been taken into consideration when Ozark Heights was developed.
Thank goodness they moved in.
I'm a born arguer, I guess. I could debate
mobile home
most.
parks like the one that's out there.
Well, you know, I don't know that I'm a fan of that, but I think that you have to have guidelines and you have to have zoning regulations. If we're all going to coexist in a small area, such as a city, there has to be ebbs and flows. There has to be guidelines. There have to be restrictions. And to me, I look at when I look at zoning, my own personal opinion, it's kind of like an onion. You know, you start out with a lot of density right in the middle of that onion, and each layer is a different use. You get into some of those commercial areas, just like Springfield, where you have all those apartment complexes, but they're usually very close to a commercial district or an amenity like that. Now, I agree with Mr. Gardner. I think that having a 96 unit addition like this would be much better with a amenity, but we don't require that. So that would be up to the graces of the homeowner or the property owner to put in something like that to help, again, maybe give another concession.
Okay.
So we can't require it.
Yeah.
Because our code is not.
So what power does the city, we all have this idea of how we want Ozark to look. So do we have the power to do anything about that? Or does, if somebody buys property, they just get the bill?
Mr. Childers is ready to push the button. And,
oh, please do.
But we do. We have our planning and zoning commission, and we a lot of times rely on their expertise.
And they declined this one.
And they declined this one.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Gardner.
Well, I want to go back to the analogy of the onion, and you peel back the layers. That's exactly what we're doing tonight. It's called transitions from a very nice subdivision to the property that is directly adjacent to them on the east is zoned commercial. Okay, and we do have the other ones that were there up north, the mobile home park, the power, the Liberty Power Station. We have those other things that were there a long time, but zoning is all about transitions. It's if you've got commercial and multifamily here, and you've got a high-end residential here, and you've got a piece of property in the middle that you want to develop, what is the best to put there that's not exactly like either one of its neighbors? And that is something, in the case of Ozark Heights, it's a little less than that and a little more than the other. And it's a transition, it's in between, and that's what zoning is all about. So that's my opinion.
Okay. Any other questions, comments? Mr. Flores?
The other thing I would say about multifamily is, I feel like that's a lot of what we're trying to pin down here is the appropriate place for it more than anything. I mean, we know we have to have multifamily. We know there's a lot of people building multifamily or wanting to build multifamily here. And I think that the thing we do about that is in zoning, whether we allow something to be zoned for multifamily or not. I think that's really the question here is this the appropriate spot for multifamily? Now, I'm not saying it is or isn't, but I think that's one thing that we, as a board, have to take into consideration is the appropriate places for it, where those should be, how that makes the city look like in 10 years and 20 years and 30 years. And I think that's really the question of this, as far as what they're wanting to build, isn't really an issue for me. The real question is where they're wanting to build it. And, I hear Mr. Gardner's point as far as this is a typical buffer that ends up happening between residential and commercial. That happens a lot where you have that, where it's a transition area in between. So I see that there. And I honestly, with this here, I kind of hear everybody's point with it. I understand where Ozark Heights coming from. I see where our planning and zoning commissioners denied it, but it's an interesting one, because you do wish there was something a little bit more softer of a transition from the bigger lots we have right here in Ozark Heights versus where we're going with it. But I'd be curious what Mr. Gardner has to say about it.
I'm sorry, because I know we're really kind of beating the horse here, but it's not just the transition. If there was a bigger investment in this property, maybe in the way of an amenity like a pool or whatever, then I would feel better about the fact that they're going to take better care of it. Because I know that there are apartment complexes here that have been built. First 5 years, they're great. Second 5 years, they're okay. The third 5 years, they're starting to, to get ratty because a lot of them aren't taken care of. But if there's a bigger investment in there, it's going to be taken care of better.
One of the things to consider is this is the first reading of this one section. We'll be going to the second reading of the other two parcels coming up shortly. So they're not all in the same meeting. So you're going to have a decision to make here shortly with regards to parcel 2 and 3, which will potentially dictate parcel 1 here. Is there any other comments? Oh, I'm sorry.
With respect to you, I like what you're doing. I really do. And I'm not pointing to be disrespectful. It's just the way I do things. I do respect what you're trying to do. I just don't feel that this is appropriate because they want to maintain the integrity of their single family dwellings. I respect that too. I understand that. But I also know from what I did for a living for many years, anytime you add a multifamily component into any neighborhood, you also increase a police officer's call for service. It is a proven fact. I don't want to see that happen here. I'm not saying calls for service do not happen with single families, because they do. But I think the likelihood of numerous calls being generated for any particular service is going to be lessened with a single family unit. That's what I wanted to say. I don't think this is a good fit for that. And again, this is only the first reading, just like the mayor had touched on. But everyone's given their 2 cents worth. Well, I'll give you some change on mine. That's just the way I feel about it. I do like what you're doing. I do like that you are building, okay? Ozark is a thriving place, okay? Or I wouldn't be here. but I also see the negativity that comes with it. Anytime you put this particular build into something that's already been established, and I know that there already have been some things brought up about the pre-existing mobile home park or the pre-existing commercial lots. I understand that, but I've seen this particular home setting, and it is well kept. It's extremely well kept, and I would like to see that continue regardless. That's just the way I feel about things. And again, that's David Snyder's point of view, okay? But I also have to take everything else into consideration. You have a property, you want to develop it. Let's do it. As they say, check the boxes and make sure it's done. But I wanted to air that and get that out there, especially with the potential increased calls for service. Because anytime you put families together in a closed, confined area, you have issues. It's just, that's the law of the land. That's the way it works. But that's all I have to say.
All right. One last time from the audience. Yes, sir. Go right ahead. You'll need to re-engage the microphone, please. The one in the middle. There we go.
Okay.
And you're live.
Chris Kennard, 2170 East Rockhurst. So I appreciate everybody's comments, respect the comments, obviously. Our initial meeting several months ago, we requested a meeting with staff, and we asked specifically, what does Ozark need? We have multiple properties that we would like to develop in the city of Ozark. Some are commercial, some are geared more towards residential. The answer back to us was that we do in fact need rental property. We do in fact need apartments, which we didn't ask for apartments, by the way. We didn't ask for an R4, we asked for an R3. Those are up to 7 or up to 8 units, I believe. We didn't ask for an R4. So we're trying to provide what we initially were told was needed. And last time I checked, there's not property available next to the OC, and that, the property that we own is off Longview Road. That property was purchased several years ago. It was purchased after the bulldozing that was referred to. But we're just trying to do something. We're trying to develop the property that we own. We're trying to accommodate the city as we were told what the need was. And we're not trying to ruin anybody's property value by any stretch of the imagination. Just trying to develop and create more taxpayers and so on. So that's all I had to say. Appreciate it.
Thank you, sir. All right. If there's no one, yes, sir, go right ahead.
David Sladen, 2107 East Rockhurst, Springfield, Missouri. I understand what the neighbors are concerned about. I've had this same situation happen where I live. My family and I are the ones that actually own the property and are developing the property. And I appreciate everyone's input, everyone's comments, but I want to assure everyone that this property will be done and done properly, and it will be maintained, and it will be an asset to the community. The property has been referred to as apartments. It's R3 zoning. That's what we're asking for. And it's a sizable investment. It will be looked after and it will be maintained. Our families had many years of experience managing and owning single family, multifamily, commercial, industrial property. So this is not something that we're new at. We're excited to be in Ozark. As Chris mentioned, we've got other property that we would like to develop as well, moreover on the commercial side. But this piece of property that we're looking for the R3 zoning for, we want to be good neighbors to you guys. That's part of the reason that we've done the conditional overlay. And you were right, we could take that property and put in smaller homes and probably make more money, but that's not what we want to do. We want to go in there and put in a nice development, nice homes, and they will be maintained.
And we will be as respectful as we possibly can to our neighbors. That's important. I assure you that we will do what we can to be a good neighbor. Yep. Any questions from anybody on the board?
Oh, Mr. Galloway?
Yeah. I take what you're saying at face value. The place where I'm at is very similar, as I mentioned, to where Alderman Gardner is at. I view zoning as one of managing transition from one kind of use to another. And I think where some aldermen are at is whether this is the correct transition. I can see where this could be the correct transition because there's industrial not very far. And I do remember one of the owners of one of the companies there expressed to all of us when it came to residential, he said, we were here for anybody and we're noisy. We are noisy. And we just want to be assured that we're not run out because residences are coming in. And the noise transcends or moves over greater distances than appearances do. And we all assured him, no, we're not about to run out existing businesses. That's an example of why transition is important. We have a lot of different interests to accommodate here. I guess my concern really has to do with amenities and what is offered at Ozark Heights, which will be very much open to people that are here. And I've been to Ozark Heights. I have friends in Ozark Heights. I've visited Ozark Heights. I drive by Ozark Heights about every other week. So I'm very familiar with what it is. So I guess my concern is, and maybe, and I'm not trying to put you on the spot, but it is my concern. It is the thing that when I'm voting here, and that I feel like ought to be addressed is what is wrong with their concern that kids that are living there are going to, because there are no amenities there, are going to want to go naturally to a place where there are. And just as you think about your response, I was president of an HOA in Springfield, and our subdivision was next to transitional housing, which was next in turn to commercial. And we had to monitor that. But we were the only neighborhood that had amenities. And we had a pool. I can't remember what other things we had. And we sure did have issues with people coming on to our land. It was a bit different than what this setup is, but we did have that issue. We had to work with police. We actually were fairly merciless with kids that came over just to preserve our property. So what would be wrong with saying, with what Rick was saying, which is if there's an investment in an amenity, it's not only just a draw for kids to stay on property, but is also a signal to these people that this really is an investment that's going to be taken care of, as I think Rick was saying. That's my question. What do you see the point in that, or is there a counter argument to it that I'm missing?
Good question, Mr. Galloway. I appreciate your question. One thing that I think we could do in an effort to be a good neighbor would be during our leasing process, we could actually put in the lease and make it part of part of the application process and let the tenants know very clearly that Ozark Heights Pool and their neighborhood is a private organization that is not allowed, that the tenants are not allowed to use. We could make that very clear, no different than we will make very clear when the rent's due and what the lease terms are and other conditions of the lease. So that would certainly be something that we could do as well in order to alleviate hopefully some of the concerns that the neighbors have. And I understand where they're coming from. And if also in that lease, I mean, there's certain things that if a tenant doesn't abide by a lease, we have the legal right to evict them. And if they were to break too many of these rules, we could ask them to move. Not what we want to do, but we may have more. We may have more ability to govern the tenant's actions than the folks in Ozark Heights think. Did that answer your question, Mr. Galloway?
Well, I guess where I think that I won't speak for Mr. Gardner, it does kind of resonate with me that I do appreciate what you're saying about people signing leases and so on. These kids don't sign leases, you know, I mean, they want things to do, they're bored. They have other friends and they want to go do things. And I guess my concern was if there's not an amenity in this property, and I understand this is a zoning conversation, not a planning conversation. But it's really our only time where we can really put our imprimatur on things. I just have this concern that that those kids are going to go where the amenity is, regardless of what lease the parents sign. But I certainly respect what this development is about and what you're trying to do, and I'm trying to match that with the concern that's been kind of resonating with me, and it's really my main concern.
I understand. If this is something, the amenity, don't know that we'll put in a pool, but maybe some green space or the walking trail that we've agreed to. If there's some other amenities that we could put together, we'd be open to discussing that. Yeah.
All right, thank you, sir.
You bet. Thank you. Any other questions?
Any other questions for the applicant? Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much.
All right. Yes, ma'am. Just go right ahead. We've
Okay,
got you
I
from
just want to emphasize, I didn't say a while ago. Sorry, I want to emphasize, we maintain almost 8 acres of property, which I did not state earlier. And all of the amenities that we do have is a swimming pool, tennis courts, basketball courts. We have, the pond is for obviously water maintenance, but we do maintain it. We have 2 fountains. There's beautiful koi there. We have horseshoe areas. Volleyball. We have a gazebo for, you know, our neighborhood to picnic or enjoy or whatever. So because of that, we do spend a lot of money to maintain that. I'm throwing a very reasonable figure out there. We probably spend close to $35,000 a year just to mow, maintain the swimming pool, electricity, water, all of that together. So there is an investment there. And I will say one of the reasons why we're able to monitor and to enforce maintenance is because we actually live there. All of us board members and the people that actually live there, they know who to contact. They see us regularly. They comment to us, hey, have you checked this out? And I do know you see a lot of public or other private residents that, I hate to say it, but it's obvious rental property. For us, if it gets over 6-7 inches tall, they get a letter and then there's enforcement there. But I'd be hard pressed to believe that the city will send somebody out to mow their yard when it gets 6 or 8 inches tall. It'll be more like 2 feet tall or 3 feet. So I just feel that in order to maintain that maintenance that the property owners are talking about, it won't be of the same caliber. And so that, just wanted to pitch that out there too.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right. Any additional comment from the public? Public portion will be closed. Mr. Campbell, do you have anything? You're being awfully quiet up there.
No.
No? All right.
No.
There's no one else on Zoom. This bill will be held over till the next legislative session. Mr. Gardner.
Second.
Motion was made by Alderman Gardner, seconded by Alderman Flores, to place bill number 3380 on its first reading by title and description only. All those in favor?
An ordinance adopting revisions to the City of Ozark design standards for public improvements.
All right. Who's got this one? Ms. Bischoff? Oh, Mr. Parsons, I'm sorry.
Yeah, it was scheduled for Mr. McCart, but he's feeling under the weather, so I'll take it. It's a fairly straightforward and simple change to our design standard submittal revision process. As you know, we continue to evolve and improve as a department. We recently went to a software which we can't take credit for. I think P&Z really took the lead on this. SmartGov is our name of our new software, which is an online submittal process. This basically just revises the submittal process to match what that software needs in terms of the electronic files and the CAD files. So we're simply changing, everything's X'd out that we're changing, everything's in bold red that we're switching to. So the X'd out or the crossed out portions we'll be removing, and then the other portions we'll be adding in there. But it's simply to ensure that we're offering a customer-friendly format for our submissions. And we won't require so much paper until the end of the submittal process, once we've solidified the design. So that also helps save some money on behalf of the individuals that are submitting plans. So a lot of this is going to be digitally on the front end. At the end, we still like to have paper for field copies. You can't beat a good set of field copies. The phone and the computers just don't do the same thing as rolling out a set of plans, but it does simplify things on the front end. So that's all we're asking of you tonight, is just that we simplify the submittal process and go to a more digital format on the front end and a more paper format on the back end.
All right. Does anybody have any questions for Mr. Parsons? No. Is there anyone in the audience here this evening to speak on behalf of this bill, for or against? No. One last chance for the Board of Aldermen. Mr. Campbell, do you have any questions, comments, concerns?
No.
Hearing none, we'll close the public session, and this bill will be held over until the next legislative session. Mr. Galloway.
Your Honor, I move that we place bill number 3 on its first reading by title.
Second.
Motion was made by Alderman Galloway, seconded by Alderman Flores, to place bill number 3381 on its first reading by title only. All those in favor?
An ordinance reaffirming the gross receipts tax to be imposed upon electric corporations conducting business within the city and matters related thereto.
Mr. Childers. Ms. Calloway, all right.
Yes, this
Loretta.
ordinance comes to us based on state law. The Public Service Commission approved a rate increase for Liberty Electric. That rate increase exceeded 7%. Due to that, the law states that all of the gross receipts taxes will be reduced unless the Board of Aldermen or the City Council that has authority to keep in place the current rate of tax, they pass an ordinance. So tonight, the city staff is proposing to keep that gross receipts tax in place. It is presently at 2%.
Does anybody have any questions for Ms. Calloway? Is there anyone in the audience here this evening to speak on this bill? Hearing none, we'll close the public session. And this bill will be held over until the next legislative session. Mr. Galloway?
Your Honor, place bill number 3382 on its first reading by title only.
Motion was made by Alderman Galloway, seconded by Alderman Gardner to place bill number 3382 on its first reading by title and description only. All those in favor?
An ordinance calling an election in the city of Ozark, Missouri to be held on November 8th, 2022, to submit to the qualified voters the question of whether the city shall levy a local use tax.
All right, Mr. Childers.
Well, we've talked about this a lot. And the local use tax is basically the equivalent of charging the same amount of sales tax for internet and online purchases. There's been a lot of discussion at the state, not only discussion at the state level, but adoption of laws at the state level that allows for the state to collect sales tax on out-of-state purchases that are being made in Missouri. The city of Ozark has put this on the ballot twice, and both times it has been very unique circumstances. Times that the ballot has been moved around. We've had different projects and so forth. And we think we've talked to a lot of folks, and we think we know better now how to communicate why we think this is important. In addition to that, the board has had a lot of discussion. We want to level the playing field for our existing brick and mortar businesses. We want to do more and give back to the public. And in this particular instance, it has been decided that if the use tax is successful and supported by the voters, it will be used to go to public safety. Not other things, but dedicated 100% to public safety. That is what this tax does, and I will answer any questions that the board or the public may have.
Mr. Gardner.
How can the public be sure that it's going to be used for public safety when it's not in the ballot language or in the bill language? It'll be in the ballot.
It is in the ballot language. If you look in section 1 under the question, it states, shall the city of Ozark, Missouri impose a local use tax for public safety purposes at the same rate as the local sales tax. The rest of the language is from the state law, which is required to be in the bill.
That is very clear. Thank you.
Mr. Snyder.
No, I think this is a good idea. I think if this is presented in such a way to where it is strictly for public safety, we will get the support of the voters. As long as it's not divvied up and going somewhere else, because that's where it needs to go. We're getting a lot of feedback here. It's strictly public safety. We've had discussion about it before, and we believe that's where it needs to be. And I think the police department would benefit greatly from it. And it would augment anything that we have existing to go along with it as well.
Mr. Galloway.
It is a misnomer that the property taxes are what pays for law enforcement. It is our sales taxes, and they take up most of our budget. And they are presently housed in a strip mall.
In an old bank.
In an old bank in a strip mall. Thank you for clarifying that. They are short-staffed. They have great response times. They have high standards. They have an excellent chief. We are not going to be able to maintain law enforcement we need, given the issues that are happening just north of us and issues that have been talked about in earlier resolutions. This use tax is our shot at keeping our town the way it needs to be. We had some discussion about whether we would call it a police tax or a public safety tax, and I believe the chief said, please say public safety, because our law enforcement duties can sometimes change over time to meet the needs of the community. And so that's why we kept it that way. I'm just reminding. This is 100% good bill. It is something that is an absolute necessary for this community, for our future.
Mr. Gardner, do you have a comment?
Oh, no.
No? I have to concur with the statements that have been made. Leveling the playing field for our local merchants is a very important thing. There's a lot of people that buy products online, and that's great. But if they're making that sole decision to buy products online to skip paying sales tax, and that hurts our local merchants that support our city, then that's not a good thing. The fact that we potentially would, without this use tax in place, could lose another revenue source that we already currently have is a very scary proposition. Not to mention that, and I don't know the numbers right off the top of my head, but I'm going to defer to the city administrator. Our general fund collects how much per year?
The 1 cent general fund is around $4 million.
And the police department currently uses?
Just about 1% over that.
So currently we have an ability to underfund our police department that's understaffed. They're housed in a bank in an old strip mall. This is 100% all the way around a good thing for our community. So hopefully the citizens will stand behind it and believe in their community and believe in what we're trying to provide for them. You asked me to give my comments and opinions about things. You guys better get used to it. No, I promise I won't do it very often. This is just something I really believe in. I think we have got to take care of ourselves. I've talked to numerous developers, both on the commercial and the residential side of things, and they want to invest in a community that invests in itself. They want to invest their money in a community that's safe. And this is one of the ways that we can help provide that safe community, because currently we're not generating enough revenue to keep up with where we're at, our status quo. So, any other comments? Anybody? Oh, Ms. Alder.
It is true that Nixa they passed their sales tax, right?
Their use tax.
Their use tax, sorry.
A couple of years ago.
Yes, yes. It made it quite a bit of difference, right?
It did.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Mr. Flores.
The thing I was gonna say is when it comes to the taxes that go to your own town, to your hometown, those are the most important taxes I find, are the local taxes, are the ones that affect our lives every day, that keep our children safe, our streets clean. I mean, it's the most important tax that you see the best return on, that's for sure. And when I think it's important for people to understand that when people buy things online right now, those are the one taxes that are getting missed. You know, that us here personally aren't getting anything to put back into our streets or whatever it may be. And I think that us taking this entire amount and putting it 100% towards our police department is an excellent move. And I think it's where we need it the most. And like I said, I think our local taxes are our most important taxes. And it's just really important people understand how that affects us. And every time people are buying things online from out-of-state purchases, and everybody else is getting their taxes paid, but us here, right here at home. And so, yeah, we really need this passed. Very important.
Is there anyone in the audience here this evening that would like to speak on this bill? Any other comments from the Board of Aldermen? Oh, I'm sorry. Come right up, sir. Go ahead and do your name and address again for the clerk.
Philip Webb, 2808 North 24th Street in Ozark Heights.
Yes, sir.
And the police department here is a fantastic organization. I've just learned to appreciate them, and they are Johnny on the spot. When you need them, they come. And Ozark has, as far as I know, one of the finest police departments here. And anything you can do to better that and make it stronger and keep it so they're not so thinned out it sure would be great because you have a great one. And I say we have a great one now, but I've only been here 5 years but I've found it to be just exactly what you're talking about. And protect them all you can. The safety of the people in Ozark is paramount. Those guys do a great job.
Perfect. We may be calling you to come walk neighborhoods with us.
Hey, I'll be glad to do that. I'll be glad to do that. I just, every time they drive through our neighborhood, just kind of check, not any reason, just driving through, just checking things out. I always stop them and let them know I appreciate them because I really do. I have 14 grandchildren and boy, I want them to be safe and they are in Ozark. And I appreciate what you do for the police department.
Absolutely. Thank you, sir. Anybody else here to speak on this bill? If there's no further comments from the Board of Aldermen, there's nothing in the audience. I'll close the public session and this bill will be held over till the next legislative session. Resolutions, Mr. Galloway.
Your Honor, I move that we place resolution number 1969 that we read it by title only.
Motion was made by Alderman Galloway, seconded by Alderman Gardner to read resolution number 1969 by title and description only. All those in favor?
A resolution appointing a board member to represent the city of Ozark on the Regional Broadband Initiative Board.
All right, Mr. Childers, do you have this one? You want Ms. Callaway?
Yes, the Regional Broadband Initiative Board was established pursuant to two agreements that work together. The first agreement was to do an analysis for an organization that could come in and propose a study. The second agreement was between all of the municipalities that are involved and the two counties that are involved to create the actual board that would then proceed with the study that would determine whether a regional broadband infrastructure company would be hired at that later time. The board needs a representative from each agency, and so their bylaws call out that you will appoint one board member and one alternate member. The person who had the lead on this project was our Deputy City Administrator, Samantha Payne, and so she has been named as the proposed individual to be on the board, with the alternate being our City Administrator, Steve Childers.
Any questions, comments, concerns from the board? Hearing none.
Your Honor, I move that we enact resolution 1969.
Motion was made by Alderman Galloway, seconded by Alderman Gardner to enact resolution number 1969. All those in favor? Did you raise your hand? Okay, perfect. You're blocking. I was looking up to see if Mr. Campbell was raising his hand as well. So. Yeah, we can do that. All right, since we've been going for just shy of 2 hours, it's been requested that we take a small recess. So we will go into recess for no more than 5 minutes. was just saying thank you for the health and welfare break, allowing us to do that. All right, second reading and final passage of bills. Mr. Flores.
I move that we place bill 3372 on its second reading by title and description.
Second.
Motion was made by Alderman Flores, seconded by Alderman Gardner to place bill, or pardon me, place bill number 3372 on its second reading by title and description only. All those in favor?
An ordinance amending the zoning code and official map by changing the zoning classification of certain property bordered by South Selmore Road to the northwest.
All right. Are there any additional questions, comments, or concerns with regards to this bill? Hearing none.
Move that we adopt bill 3372 as ordinance 22-038.
Motion was made by Alderman Flores, seconded by Alderman Gardner to adopt bill number 3372 as ordinance number 22-038. May I get a roll call, please?
Alderman Campbell,
Aye.
Alderman Snyder.
Aye.
Alderman Gardner.
Aye.
Alderman Alder. Aye. Alderman Flores.
Aye.
Alderman Galloway.
Aye.
We have 6 aye votes, motion carries.
I move that we place bill 3373 on its second reading by title and description.
Motion was made by Alderman Flores, seconded by Alderman Gardner to place bill number 3373 on its second reading by title and description only. All those in favor?
An ordinance amending the zoning code and official map by changing the zoning classification of certain property bordered by Minnesota Road to the north.
All right. Does anybody have any additional questions, comments, concerns with regards to the bill as it's presented? Hearing none.
I move that we adopt bill 3373 as ordinance 22-039.
Motion was made by Alderman Flores, seconded by Alderman Gardner to adopt bill number 3373 as ordinance number 22-039. May I get a roll call, please?
Alderman Snyder. Alderman Galloway.
Aye.
Alderman Campbell.
Aye.
Alderman Flores.
Aye.
Alderman Gardner.
Aye.
Alderman Alder. We have 6 aye votes, motion carries.
Move that we place bill 374 on its second reading by title and description only.
Motion was made by Alderman Flores, seconded by Alderman Gardner to place bill number 3374 on its second reading by title and description only. All those in favor?
An ordinance approving the preliminary plat for Natural Bridge subdivision and authorizing the Director of Planning and Development to accept the dedication of the public streets and easements to the city as shown on the preliminary plat upon the applicant filing and recording a final plat that substantially conforms to the preliminary plat, and authorizing the city clerk to sign the final plat upon compliance with the terms of this ordinance.
Mr. Galloway?
We had quite a bit of public comment on this development, so I just wanted to explain my thought process and the vote. I believe that planning and zoning had recommended this development. That is something that carries weight with me. The development is happening on the south side of town. That carries a great deal of weight with me. As we've talked about, if we can move our center of gravity more southern, it is more likely that those residents will patronize Ozark businesses. They have to go buy the bulk of Ozark to get to Springfield. If they're on the north side, they're just going to shop in Springfield for the most part. But I'm not being critical of that, but I'm just saying, if you're on the south side, we are getting a bit better development and more bang for our buck. The quality of the developer is also something that I'm considering as well. And finally, the policy decision was made a very long time ago that we would be developing on the south side of town. It was anticipated we would have residential development on the south side of town. We spent a lot of money on a wastewater treatment plant on the south side of town, which is in the general area of where this development is. And so it was always contemplated before I became an Ozark citizen, that there would be growth there. So it's the right kind of growth. It's in the right part of the city. It's the right developer. And it was recommended by planning and zoning.
Any additional questions, comments, concerns, Mr. Gardner?
Well, I know there was a lot of concern at the first reading about the road access. And I just want to say that I am confident that the developer will be able to provide the kind of access that they have put on the plat. And of course, if they can't, then it has to be built according to the plat. So I am confident that that's a non-issue. And I just want to say I'm in favor.
Any additional questions, comments, concerns from the board?
The only thing I was going to say is, with all the public comment, I went through quite a few concerns as well, even with lead mines and things like that. And there have been lead mines in that area, but there are none on that property, not that I can find record of. So I just kind of went through all those different things one by one and just tried to see if there was any of those things really was something that would be a concern of ours. And I couldn't find any of them that I felt was weighing on it or that I felt was a concern. So I just wanted to bring that up as well.
Okay. Any additional comments?
No,
questions?
I move that we adopt Bill 3374 as ordinance 22-040.
Motion was made by Alderman Flores, seconded by Alderman Gardner to adopt bill number 3374 as ordinance number 22-040. May I get a roll call vote, please?
Alderman Gardner. Aye. Alderman Galloway. Aye. Alderman Flores.
Aye.
Alderman Snyder. Aye. Alderman Alder. Aye. Alderman Campbell.
Aye.
We have 6 aye votes. Motion carries.
All right, Mr. Flores.
Move that it place Bill 3375 on its first reading by title and description.
Second reading.
I'm sorry, Mr. Campbell.
I think he said first reading, if I understood him correctly.
I'm not sure if he did or not.
You want me to restate?
Let's reaffirm that statement.
Move to place Bill 3374 on its second reading by title and description.
7-5.
Oh, sorry, I'm wrong one yet. Now I'm all messed up. Yeah. I move that we place Bill 3375 on its second reading by title and description.
All right. All right. Let me re-change this. All right. The motion was made by Alderman Flores, seconded by Alderman Gardner to place bill number 3375 on its second reading by title and description only. All those in favor?
An ordinance amending the corporate boundaries of the city of Ozark, Missouri by annexing certain real property, generally known as 3 parcels, approximately 4.75, 10, and 10.25 acres, which are bordered on the north by Longview Road.
All right. Any additional questions, comments, concerns with regards to the annexation of the property?
Mayor, I will address one point. The city staff did receive a protest petition in opposition to the annexation. Staff has reviewed that. State law requires 5% of the qualified voters of Ozark in order for that process to be initiated. Ozark currently has 12,404 qualified voters, which would require 620 signatures. We received approximately 163 signatures upon our review. So it did not meet that threshold.
Okay. All right. Any questions, comments, concerns with regards to the annexation? Mr. Galloway.
I'm just throwing this out to fellow aldermen. Do we want to handle this legislation as a group with the other? We want to handle it piecemeal as it's set out right now, because we have one bill that's trailing this.
So you'll have, yes, you'll have the annexation, 3 zonings. The 2 zonings. Mr. Childers.
I was just gonna say, you can't have them be one bill because they're annexations and zoning, so they all have to be their own independent bill because they're actually 3 separate pieces of property. So you couldn't combine them, but I think what you were probably intending to say was that do we want to deal with the entire proposal at the same time, at the same meeting, and in order to be able to do that, you would need to vote to table and carry over, and maybe that's, okay, I'll stop talking now and I'm gonna turn it over to the legal counsel.
Ms. Callaway, would you clarify?
State law, you'll notice that about halfway down, statement that states that public hearing is held not less than 14 days and not more than 60 days after the petition was received. This, in concurrence with zoning matters, follows a timeline under state law. And if the regulatory board that makes the decision on this matter doesn't act in a certain time frame, the state may consider that you have adopted it by lack of action. And so for that reason, action would be legally recommended tonight on these matters.
Okay, that answers that question.
Not on these because they proceeded to second reading. The first bill was amended, so it got kicked back to a first reading, which would start that time frame. It would adjust the time frame. This one has moved through the process, so the time frame still stands. And so a court would determine that by non-action, you have in essence approved it without acting.
Well, I can say that I really, really would like to consider this subdivision. I feel that annexation is probably our best point of best pivot point for this kind of legislation. And I certainly don't want to do nothing and have it pass. I certainly want to vote on it. I would like the developer to have some time to think about his comments on it, but I will say that I would be inclined to vote against this just so that it doesn't pass automatically. But that would in no way mean that I would be inclined to vote against it if it was all held as a piece. I would really like to hear from the developer what response he had to the statements that he heard here. But I don't want this to be fait accompli either. And annexation is a better point to, is a better legislation for us to act on, if I remember the law correctly from our extensive discussions about what authority we have and what we don't, and how much leeway we have and where we don't have leeway. That's just my 2 cents.
Okay.
Mayor Jackson.
Oh, yes, I'm sorry.
It's okay. I think a lot of the comments that were made earlier tonight, which I respect all the comments and I appreciate the professionalism that was shown. I think that a lot of the comments, though, really were geared toward plating. Now there was some that was geared toward. Really, there was not any that was geared toward not annexing. I guess it was geared more toward. It was geared more toward the zoning, and that would be pertinent to some of the bills to come after this. I didn't hear any opposition to annexing the 3 tracks.
I think you're correct. Does anybody agree? Ms. Alder?
I was just going to ask Bruce, do you feel that way? That they're 2 separate issues?
No, I don't. I mean, we wouldn't be having this discussion if we weren't having a developer that was wanting to develop the land. So I mean, I think the two pieces of legislation are tied. We have, I think, greater say-so on refusing annexation than we do on a plat, to be honest with you. You know, I feel that if we handled it all as one package, that would be a better approach if we want to have input on the development. And again, I would like to give the developer a chance to reflect on the comments that were here, because I think I do understand the theory behind it. And I do think that you have to have transitional housing in that area. But I do also think that the developer ought to reflect on the views that you said and I said, and I know they're different views. And then we as a group handle it all at one time. So I do think they're tied as a practical matter.
You got a comment?
Yes, I do.
Yes, go right ahead.
I don't have a problem with going ahead with the annexation of all three parcels, because I'm basically in favor of the project. But I do think, and I spoke to them at our little break, I do think that the fact that the 10 acres on the west was on first reading tonight. And I'm not recommending this, but if they were wanting to take serious consideration as to what we said about amenities and propose something different, they could always table the next two zoning, and we would already have it annexed, because we can't pass the zoning of the west 10 acres until the next meeting, because it was on first reading tonight with the overlay. So so for that reason, regardless of what, I'm in favor of the annexation of all three parcels. But I think there's some work that needs to be done on the other.
Okay. Any additional questions, comments, concerns? Hearing none. Oh, go ahead. Go right ahead.
The only thing I was going to say is I agree with you, Mr. Gardner, about that, because I think the annexation of it and the zoning of it are going to be two different things. And I do agree with Alderman Galloway about trying to deal with all three parcels at the same time when it comes to the zoning of them. And I'm not quite sure what the way forward is on that, but as far as this one here and annexing the property, I move to adopt Bill 3375 as ordinance 22-041.
Motion was made by Alderman Flores, seconded by Alderman Gardner to adopt Bill number 3375 as ordinance number 22-041. May I get a roll call vote, please?
Alderman Campbell,
Aye.
Alderman Snyder. Alderman Galloway.
Yeah.
Alderman Gardner. Alderman Alder.
Aye.
Alderman Flores.
Aye.
We have five votes, 1 nay, motion carries.
All right, Mr. Flores.
Move that we place Bill 3377 on its second reading by title and description only.
Second.
Motion was made by Alderman Flores, seconded by Alderman Campbell, to place Bill number 3377 on its second reading by title and description only. All those in favor?
An ordinance amending the zoning code and official map by changing the zoning classification of certain property, 10.25 acres in size, bordered by Longview Road. Staff has an update related to this property as well.
Yes, ma'am.
The staff received similar signatures for the opposition to this zoning application. However, none of those signatures were within the 185 feet for this parcel. So none of them met that 30% of total acreage that would require a 2/3 vote.
Okay, just a question. if the same number of petitioners had the same petition against the first parcel was just on its first reading this evening, what would the outcome be?
As staff, we received this on Friday, so I reviewed it all day today in addition with Megan Bischoff from planning. And I got to the last 2 pages, which have an additional 15 signatures that I have not been able to analyze in their relation to that first parcel. But presently, we anticipate only 7% of the total acreage being met, not the 30% that would be needed to require a 2/3 vote. Again, that's the only thing that it would trigger. It just requires an additional vote in favor. However, it is not anticipated that those 15 signatures will change anything, but they do have an additional 2 weeks to gather additional signatures.
Okay. The only reason I ask is this is a complicated issue with 3 different parcels, 2 of them being tonight, 1 of them following 2 weeks later. And all of the testimony that was given this evening kind of makes this a convoluted process, in my opinion.
Mayor,
Yes, sir.
I think I'm right on this, but anyway, hear me out. With us having 6 members present tonight, a majority vote is 2/3 vote. So it's really a moot point, the 2/3 vote, I would think. I defer to Ms. Calloway on that.
Yeah, she
I
agrees.
couldn't,
I believe she agrees with you, yes.
okay, I just pointing that out.
Okay. All right, well, the board has a decision to make. Mr. Flores.
What mechanism, if any, do we have to address the concerns of the board and try to put these all on the same night to be able to have that reading? Is there any way forward with that, or? But if we vote to table it, do we send it back to its first reading, or can we vote to table it till? So I can table this one to our next meeting.
The board is free to make a motion to table anything that they would like.
Go ahead, Mr.
Okay, what's the downside?
I'm not able to hear them. I'm not able to hear them talking.
You could potentially receive a challenge from the applicant, but in this situation, they may find it preferable as well for all 3 to come forward at the same time. So a motion to table could be.
Do you have a preference? Okay.
A motion to table is being discussed and absent an objection from the applicant.
So I asked if you were interested in tabling these next 2 bills so that they all come back at the exact same time. Please, if you'll hit the middle button.
Right, yeah, press.
There you go. Thank you.
107 East Rockhurst, Springfield, Missouri. We're here tonight to ask the board to annex the property, all 3 pieces, and to give us the R3 zoning that we've submitted paperwork for. And we did all the preliminary work, sending out the information to the residents within so many feet. And we are asking for annexation and for the R3 zoning, please.
Your annexation was approved.
Okay.
Now we're back to the zone.
Okay. And we're here asking for the R3 zoning as we submitted, please.
Well, we can't give you the zoning you want on the west parcel until the 18th of July, because it was on first reading tonight.
Okay.
So it would be impossible for us to do all 3 parcels tonight. But what I think I'm hearing and what I tend to favor But if you don't favor it, then I don't favor it, okay? Is that we table these next two, which is the middle parcel and the east parcel, so that it can be deliberated, give you a chance to, as the developer, to think about some of the comments that were made and what you can do to ensure passage of those three, and then bring that back concerning all three parcels on the 18th of July. Otherwise, we have to decide tonight whether we want to approve the zoning on the middle and the east parcel when we can't do it on the west parcel tonight. And we don't know how you feel about some of the suggestions you made. So it may be in your best interest to wait, but that is not my decision.
Okay, well, I appreciate your comment. We will agree to think this over and come back on June, what did you say, July?
July the 18th.
July the 18th. Would that be acceptable for the board? Is that? Okay. Okay.
Mr. Galloway as well. I'm sorry, I heard something. I know, I said, and Mr. Galloway as well. Yeah.
Okay, we'll agree to the July, what, I missed the date. July 18th, yes, we'll agree to that. Give everybody time to think about it and hopefully move forward with some more constructive cooperation. Yep. Thank you.
I can't hear you.
I make a motion to table bill 3377 until Monday, July 18th.
Motion was made to table bill number 3377 until July 18th. That motion was made by Alderman Flores, seconded by Alderman Gardner. All those in favor? There's unanimous.
I move that we place bill 3378 on its second reading by title and description only.
Second.
Motion was made by Alderman Flores, seconded by Alderman Campbell to place bill number 3378 on its second reading by title and description only. All those in favor?
Amending the zoning code and official map by changing the zoning classification of certain property 4.75 acres in size bordered by Longview Road.
Any additional comment with regards to this bill, Mr. Gardner?
Yes, I move that we table bill 3378 to come up for its second reading on July the 18th, same as 3377.
Second.
Motion was made by Alderman Gardner, seconded by Alderman Flores to table bill number 3378 until July 18th legislative session. All those in favor? That is unanimous. All right. Mr. Campbell.
Make a motion to place bill number 3379 on its second reading by title only.
Second.
Motion was made by Alderman Campbell, seconded by Alderman Flores, place bill number 3379 on its second reading by title and description only. All those in favor?
An ordinance authorizing the mayor to enter into a contract with Missouri Highways and Transportation Commission to provide work zone enforcement.
All right. Are there any additional questions, comments, or concerns with regards to this bill? Hearing none.
I make a motion, we place bill number 337, make a motion, we adopt bill number 3379 as ordinance number 22 dash, help me out, I laid my paper over there.
042.
042.
Yes, sir.
Second.
Motion was made by Alderman Campbell, second by Alderman Gardner, to adopt bill number 3379 as ordinance number 22-042. I get a roll call vote, please.
Alderman Galloway. Alderman Campbell.
Aye.
Alderman Snyder. Alderman Gardner.
Aye.
Alderman Flores. Alderman Elder. We have 6 aye votes, motion carries.
All right, report of officers, boards, committees, we're gonna adjust the agenda here and we'll go straight to closed session. Anyone having a motion to move to close?
Second.
There was a motion on the floor by Alderman Galloway, second by Alderman Flores to move to closed session to discuss matters regarding real estate and personnel. May I get a roll call vote, please?
Alderman Elder. Aye. Alderman Campbell.
I would love to. I don't know how this works on Zoom though.
We'll have you taken care of.
Okay.
Stand by.
Alderman Flores.
Aye.
Alderman Galloway.
Aye.
Alderman Gardner. Alderman Snyder. We have 6 aye votes, motion carries.
All right. Okay.
Hello. Good. Can you hear me? Okay.
Go into closed session and just watch the game.
If the Chiefs are playing the Steelers, I might agree.
It's gonna be a long one.
All right. We are back in open session, going back to topic number 9, report of officers, boards and committees. Mr. Childers.
Anything I would like to make is that our non-legislative board meeting on the Thursday. That's the week.
28.
It's in July, that's been in July. Non-legislative closed session. The further conversation there.
Okay. Nothing further?
Hey, Mayor,
Yes, sir.
I just want to make sure I caught all that. The non-legislative meeting is going to be on the 28th. Was there anything else?
No, that's it.
Okay.
All right. Public Works Director is not here with water and sewer updates. So we'll move on. All right. Miscellaneous comments and announcements, members of the Board of Aldermen and or the mayor.
I know it's late. I just want to get some out.
The day's not over yet. Go right ahead.
A&M Society, who, we have issues with the park. They
Have
had,
a working relationship with them.
we do, and they have offered me to join them to buy a share of their
very good.
organization. I asked Amanda to write me a memo, and she did a wonderful job. It was a very, very good memo. The bottom line is if I do that, if I join, I really can't be part of discussions that deal with the lease. There may be some other issues that bump into where their interests are at stake because I would be an owner. So I would be an owner of that entity. I would like to join, but I won't join if you all aren't comfortable with it. You'll lose a vote. There'll be 5. I'll always have to abstain. And you won't have to listen to me at 10:15 talk about the A&M Society. 10:20. So I just wanted to put that out there. You don't have to say this minute, but if there's a negative input, I want to hear it. I want to hear the negative input. Go ahead.
What's your reason for wanting to join them?
Well, it is an institution that is historical. It has deep roots. The families that are part of that institution have roots, deep roots. I think that I would learn a great deal in being a member and learning about Ozark, learning about their role. I also feel that within that organization, I think that even if I'm not voting on things that relate to the city, it'd be helpful for them to hear other perspectives as well on things. I would have to manage that very carefully, of course. But these people do come from vulnerable families, and you listen to them, and I think we all listen to them in our joint board meeting. I think they do come from a good place, and I think that it would be nice if I was part of that voice. That's what I was thinking. But I'm not going to do it if it seems like that would be hampering city business.
Mr. Flores.
I know it's late, I'll keep it short, but I actually don't think that would be a bad thing. I think it brings some light to them about us in the city, and I think it would do the opposite and bring light from them to us. And I think we have a lot of different boards and committees in town that a lot of us sit on. And I think that it helps kind of create continuity between all these different boards. And I never see that as a downside. And I think that they are good people. And I think they the more we can understand them and the more they can understand us, the better we're going to all work together. And I see it as a plus.
Mr. Campbell?
To complicate things even more, I ditto what Bruce just said. I've also considered joining, been asked and considered joining. And at that lunch, I think Heather was there also, but I can't speak for her. But we're going to get to a point, you know, with me and Bruce, you're already down to four aldermen being able to vote on things. I'm thinking I'll probably not join just because I think that's just cutting it too fine. I think what RJ said is good. And I think it would be a good thing that we had one member on the board. But I think I'm going to pass on mine and try to keep it uncomplicated. I don't have a problem with Bruce being on there. I think we need to limit it to one person.
Sounds reasonable. All right. Any other comments with regards to Bruce's update? Are there any other comments, miscellaneous or otherwise?
Yes, I would like to recommend that we put the zoning ordinance that we've talked about with SF1 and SF2, and particularly the requirement for a pool. If the plat has a certain number of lots or more, I would like to put that back on the fast track and get that going, so we don't get surprised with any more developments without a pool, like we just did tonight.
Yeah, I know that while that was being discussed, one of the thoughts that came through my mind was there was a comment about 100 lots or 100 dwellings, you know.
Yeah.
This was 96, so I think that we need to look at the amount of lots maybe based on the acreage or the, you know, just we need to cover all our bases. If we're going to create legislation, we need to have at least close to perfect legislation. So otherwise you're not accomplishing anything. Any additional questions, comments, concerns from the Board of Aldermen? If there are none.
Move to adjourn.
Motion was made by Alderman Galloway, seconded by Alderman Alder to adjourn this legislative session of the Board of Aldermen. All those in favor? All right. You all have a wonderful evening.
Hey, ladies, is Teresa feeling okay?
She's in a little bit of pain. Her pain level is about a 10, is about a 7 on a scale of 1 to 10.